Welcome, everybody, to Interesting AF, or Interesting as Fuck, depending on how angry you are about your children ruining your plans. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're sitting today. But we have a very interesting episode that I think that's something something I struggle with, I think, as well. So I'd love Elaine's, point of view on this. But how people manage kind of the line between professional and personal. And I think we've talked about it a little bit, right? We said, how do we, manage what we talk about in a professional or professional context? Or how do we, for example, manage conflict in professional and professional areas? So, Elaine, I'd love to, hear what you think, and we can, start this episode off like that.
Yeah, sure. So just laughing because this is the life we live as working mothers and mothers trying to start a podcast on top of that. So I'm just gonna talk while things get settled. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because especially if we're talking about people at work, like you spend the most amount of your time with those people, like even more so than your family, right? Like there's a graph, and I can't remember who, I'm sure several sources have done it, but it comes up every once in a while where it shows like where in your life and who you spend the most amount of time with at that point in your life. And in your, late 20s into your probably 60s, it's people at work because you're spending, 8 hours a day with them. Maybe that's a little bit more balanced now because of um, hybrid work is certainly a bigger thing these days, but you're still with them like virtual, whether it's virtually or over the phone, even more so than your family, even if it's still kind of like a hybrid work setting. So yeah, I think it'll be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to hear what you've been reading about this.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's always how much one wants to divulge about their personal lives, right? Like there are some things sometimes that you kind of have to talk about. Like even if you're a private person, let's say there's a health issue with one of your family members or yourself, that, rolls into the personal category. But if it's affecting your work, if it's affecting your focus, sometimes you kind of have to divulge, hey, boss, or hey, whoever, I need some support because X, Y, and Z is happening right now. And I, might not be on the ball or might not, there might be some things. But I think that the line starts crossing, at least when you're talking professionally, is when the personal kind of affects the professional. But I think there's also the other aspect of what do you say to coworkers, right? How much do you divulge of yourself in in a work setting? And I also find this changes generationally, right? Like our father's generation is like, you say nothing about your personal life. Like they shouldn't even know you're married or have kids type of like, that's like how, like, yeah, of course I'm exaggerating, but like there's a certain like level of like you keep it close to the vest, you don't. And like Gen Z is like the on the other spectrum of we will talk about everything we think about all the time. And I think it's like the difference between how we've evolved, right? How professional life, I think, has taken over a lot of our, personal space. And I think it's become, and I don't know if you think about this, but it's kind of become a hybrid third place sometimes, right? Like people like tend to see, we see the two personal professional, but I feel like people like think professional life or the office or whatever is kind of their third place too.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And I think, one of the big factors, of course, that you could very easily point to in terms of like generationally, between boomers and Gen Z in the workplace is simply social media, right? Like
Mhm.
our life has been telling you what we're doing, whether it's the humble brag, a straight up brag, like the
The
whole world.
The Jenna backdoor brag.
Yes, like it's, that's like become a way of life. And it is like for me, I'm just like constantly an open book. I have no secrets, and I just it's just easier for me to be an open book,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, I feel like even just in us recording this podcast, that's a fairly obvious thing for people to pick up on with me. Um, but yeah, like it is different in a work setting because sometimes I can just tell who I'm going to be able to be open with, and then sometimes you have to like test the waters,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And even though I'm an open book, like I am not necessarily going to go into more details or divulge certain things for people who are closed off or just don't seem like they're receptive to it or just may not have like the friendliest vibe or they're a little bit more of like a lone wolf. Like I've always been a part of a team. I like being a team player. I think it just depends on the person, but yeah, it is super interesting like playing that game too. And I don't know that game is the right word, but just like feeling it out because each person's going to be different and each work setting is going to be different. And there are, like the team I'm on, we are like unbelievably close. We've met each other's spouses. We know everything that's going on in each other's lives because we're just open like that. You and I don't work on the same team, but we're obviously super open with each other. And then there are other people um,
Like the
that,
team I'm on where I don't, I have
yeah,
like I think I know one person very closely, I would say, and then the rest it's like very, varies depending on the vibes, the vibe check that I have on this person. Like I'll work with them fine, be friendly, but it's not like I'm telling them, "Hey, this is what I did last weekend."
right, and that's fine. Like there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's like each relationship outside of work is going to be the same way. There's just people you gravitate to and people that gravitate to you, and then there are people who aren't, and that's not necessarily I don't even say that as a bad thing. It's just you don't have the opportunity to grow close. You don't work on the same team, you don't do the like it's whatever reason. Also, it would literally be impossible to be friends with the entire world, although like sometimes ugh,
You could be friendly, but like
yeah,
friends, like you don't like not every relationship you have is going to be super deep and like into it. I agree. And I think it's also the concept of people fearing that they're going to be fake. And I think we use fake like so willy-nilly, like trauma, right?
yeah,
Like with people like us, I think we have like we're extroverted, we're like talking to everybody, but I've been called fake a lot of times because people like see me as like open, gregarious, like very like extroverted, but like they feel like I'm hiding stuff because I'm so open. And like so it's very interesting. And also I have a double thing where, I have a Gemini. So people are like, "Oh, you're a Gemini, so it's got to be you're dual face." I'm like, "All right, simmer down. First of all, it's true. And second of all, no, but
leave that for a goddamn second.
yeah, like but I think it's okay to give different parts of yourself to people. You don't owe, yeah, to different people. And I don't think you owe, it's what we owe to each other, but I don't think you owe pieces of everything to everyone all the time.
Sure.
Um, and I think I think that's the reality of the struggle because first of all, we don't really know ourselves. We're constantly changing and we'll constantly be evolving depending on how, what situation. But I think it's always interesting to see how we manage the line, right? And I see that with you, right? Let's at work very clearly, we're super close. But like
Yeah.
there are people on my team that I know absolutely nothing about their personal lives, and they know absolutely nothing about mine, right? So I think there's those things where it's again feeling comfortable with somebody, feeling comfortable enough to like cross that line professionally.
Yeah, and I think using the phrase crossing the line isn't a bad thing. We're talking about like the metaphorical line, right? We're not
Yeah.
saying cross the line in like an inappropriate way at all whatsoever. And I
Well, we've
think
probably crossed it with the two of us. HR would definitely be not very happy with us.
oh yeah, of course not, but gotta live your life. Um oh, sorry, my bag just fell over and it scared the hell out of me. It sounded like there was someone behind me first.
I would have warned you about that. I'd be like,
You
hey,
put it in.
be like, hey, there's a murderer. There's a right behind you. Let's.
There's like a creepy man suddenly crawling out from underneath the guest bed.
Oh, great. Thanks for the
Having,
nightmare. Thanks for
yeah,
the
no,
nightmare,
now I'm
Elaine.
like, speaking of crossing the line, now I'm like, wait a minute, can I get the fuck out of here?
Let's
Um,
where and that's a scene. Thank you everybody for coming.
and I think, here's an interesting idea that popped or thought that popped into my head when this conversation came up. I think a lot of times too, people talk about like friendships or relationships out of convenience necessarily being a bad thing, or friendships or relationships via proximity as being a bad thing, but like it's not. That's like you were saying, it ebbs and flows, and like we're constantly changing and growing and figuring out who we are. And I think relationships are like that too. I think we talked about this like in some friendship things where like people you thought you'd be friends with for the rest of your life, you just kind of grew apart from, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just kind of what happens with life. And then there are people who like you never thought you'd still be close to, who are like literally some of your closest friends. And I honestly have examples of both from the workplace. Like there are people that I was super close to, um, because we worked together. We spent 40 hours at least a week together.
At least.
This was especially like way pre-COVID when we were in the office 5 days a week. And also like if you move to a new city or you move to a new place for your job, and that's like the cornerstone of you, then like it's not just when you're at work, but then you do happy hours with the people you work with, and you start to get to know them, and you start to build relationships based off that too. It's okay if those people then aren't as much in your life when you leave that place or when they leave, because it's kind of what happens, and people keep in touch or they lose touch. I have examples of friends I made at work who like we ended up traveling together, who I haven't spoken to in years now. I mean, now this is 15, almost 20 years later, but like I don't look back and with like sadness. Like it's just it. I hate this term, but this is probably one of the times where this phrase is actually appropriate. Like it is what it is. Like we both left these companies. We worked. Um, we kept in touch for a little while, and our lives just kind of moved in different paths. And again, that happens. And then there's other examples. Like obviously, we can take you and I out as an example. That's a fairly obvious one, but like a woman who I on my first day I literally thought she hated me, and I think she then knew she gave off that vibe to the point where the next morning I had like a muffin and an orange juice on my desk, and she's like, I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. She was in my fucking wedding. I am the godmother to her son. Like it those types of like weird examples, right? Like, she's literally one of my best friends. I would kill and die for her, where like it's just so funny how those things happen, and yet there are other, you know there's both spectrums to it and everything in the middle, and I think that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I had seen an article, and maybe this we'll talk about this. And we've I think mentioned it before. We're not taught into how to let friendships go. Like
Yeah,
sometimes they just like die and there's no closure, and
yeah,
you're just you don't like regret things, but you go, oh, that of course that ended because, and you're not gonna stop being friends with somebody because they're across the country, or but just the reality of how we live, where we are, how we go, people move in and out. And I think it's super interesting to watch how people react to those things, right? Like I've had so many friendships like fizzle out because we had a conflict that we didn't really resolve appropriately, or it was because, and these were work people that I was really close to, because again, you're at work 40 hours a week, right? So
mhm,
it's or more. I mean, for some of us, it's like even more, right? So you just go and you're like, the conflict resolution of having a friendship within work as well, if you work with them too, that opens up a whole new can of worms, right? So are you friends with somebody that's in your team? Or if there's like no delineated like roles or things like that, it becomes a lot more complicated, I think. But we're not talking about that. I think we're talking about more general things. But I think if we want to be friends with people, we're going to have to know how to let it go too, right?
Yeah, and
And maybe
also
talk about it.
I feel like a natural thing for us to do, and maybe this comes from some undiagnosed anxiety, but like I feel like it's fairly natural to turn in and say like, well, what did I do wrong? Like why, like, and overanalyze, like, and worry that maybe it was something you did, when really it might, like, every relationship is a two-way street. If you lose touch, it's not because you were the only one not reaching out, and it's not always a negative thing.
Mhm.
Like, I think that's to your point, is like we don't talk about or really know how to give up not give up, but like just know that those relationships, or recognize that those relationships have changed, and being okay with it. And like sometimes it is as simple as like that person moved across the country for me, and it just didn't become as easy for us to get in touch. And for whatever fraction of time that it took for this to no longer be a priority, that's what happened. And it
Yeah,
happened for both of us, right? Like, um it's one thing if it's one sided, but for the most part, for relationships like mine that have happened like that, it's been equal on both parts, right? Like,
yeah,
both had other stuff going on. We both got really busy. And then before we knew it, we were like, oh shit, like I haven't talked to that person in a really long time. And some people every once in a while I'll catch up with, and some people I just don't. And I just, we keep up again through social media, and that's about it. And that's fine. That's fine. I don't wish any of these people ill will. You know what I mean?
yeah. But I think, the concept of like longevity and friendships mattering
Yeah.
and making it matter. Like my husband's European, so he's like very much into the whole, oh, well, if you made friends at work, does that really matter? Like, like for them, there's like like there's a line. Like the line is you don't really make friends at work, and then you kind of like have your friends that you've had forever. Right. And I personally like look at him and I'm like, there are some friendships that you shouldn't be having anymore. Like they just weigh you down. Like I'm like, he'll listen to this and it's fine. I've told him this to his face. I'm like, dude, you don't need to be friends with these people anymore. It doesn't, but you know what? To each his own. You can do whatever you want. I'm not telling you what to do. But I think
Unless
what
you're
we want,
unless you're Linda's husband, then
yeah,
we're
unless,
telling you what to do.
exactly. But I even like I just and I think there's that line, right? So I think he's, getting more and more acclimated to the fact since he's been here that it's like, oh yes, you can make friends at work, right? You can, be, more connected to people that you meet at work because logically you're there for so much longer. And so I think that's like also a cultural thing. Like people are very much like in Europe, I think very delineated. Like you don't really make friends at work. And I know this because I know a couple of other folks that I know that when I talk to them, it's not like they talk about work colleagues like they're their friends.
Yeah.
It's like they're their colleagues. Like I think I happen to be an exception for people, and I think you are as well, like an exception for Europeans, like being their friends because you know them through work. And it's
Sure.
it's it's very interesting, I think.
I
Um,
think I think we used to have some of that culture too, though, where it's like
fair.
the same way your parents would be like, I'm not your friend, I'm your parent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's because I feel like I can almost hear my dad saying like, these are people you work with. They will, like, if someone wants to get one up over you because they're trying to get a position the same time. And I'm like, but that would happen in real life. If think about in college or in high school, if you and some other woman were crushing on the same guy or the same person or the same whatever, like, there's backstabbing all the time in real life outside of work too. So, but I do feel like there was a bit of that here. I do agree with you though, or maybe it's just us, but I do think, um, although like I'm thinking with my husband as well, uh, most of his best friends are people he met through work, and people who were in our wedding, like, were
Yeah.
from work. Um, and so I do, you're right. I mean, I think that's less of a cultural thing for us now, where that's the culture piece, right? Where like we spend so much time with these friggin' people that if you do find someone you connect with, you can be friends outside of work.
Yeah, and I think with the backstabbing thing is the closer you are to that person, the more I think the lines of communication are open to be like, yo, this is what's happening.
Sure.
But then like, that, and I think that's also another interesting thing where where's, you think you're friendly with somebody and then they do something to annoy the shit out of you that then creates a bunch of shit for you. And then it kind of changes your perception of that, right? And so the
Yeah.
key is how do you still maintain to be professional but still have this like personal hurt that's happening because you would have thought that at least that person would come to you directly as opposed to go to your boss or something.
Yeah, and I think like it is one of those things where it's like, if you had been closer friends with this person, would it have happened? Who knows? Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of that comes down to what we talk about a lot in terms of how relationships work. It's communications, and not everybody communicates the same way. And I think it's why it's a good thing you get to know your team and the people you work with, and because I don't know, just even if it's again, even if you're not friends, the more you can figure out how other people work, like, perfect example, right? Like, we've done that Discovery Insights
Yes.
at
Oh,
work,
everybody do that, please.
and it changed so much about how I work, um, in terms of even like setting meeting appointments, right? So I'm like, what was I like 95% yellow energy? It was ridiculous. I had one color above the line and it was yellow, which is a shock to nobody who knows me. But I had someone on my team who had a lot of blue energy, who is someone who likes to take everything in, analyze it, and then come to a conclusion. Meanwhile, like someone throws out a question, I'm going to just spit out the first thing that comes to mind. And knowing that there was someone on the team with so much, analyzing blue energy in meetings, like I'll set a meeting and I'll be like, here's what we're going to discuss. Like, here's the agenda. Here are the objectives we want out of this meeting. So that person can come and already know, okay, well, this is what we would have talked about. These are the things that are important to this meeting. This is what we want to come out of it. These are the action items. Instead of me just throwing something on the calendar with like one topic being like, we're going to talk about blank, like, like that being it. And then calling that person out to be like, well, what do you think? It's like, no, 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 give that person what they need ahead of time, then you can talk it through. And so just to like know those little things about other people, you don't have to be best friends with that person, but like it's just helpful to know if you're going to be working with them.
Yeah, and I think the concept of somebody did this reel about the difference between talk to think and thinking to talk.
Mm.
So my husband is a talk to think person. So he needs to talk it out while to like get to a conclusion, which is very blue. And then I'm like, oh, think I already think and I'm going to talk. Like I've already processed it. I'm done.
Yeah.
Right. And so like I get really frustrated with him when he's like going through all these like things and then he gets to a conclusion. I'm like, well, that's what I okay. But yeah, I think that's like an example of like knowing also the people that are like not up against you, but like up on the other side, right? So me and Elaine know we're both yellows, so we're most likely going to get along much easier because we're similar, even though I'm not 95% yellow. But um, we're still kind of more aligned on the same thing. And I think how like this episode is flowing, I find interesting because we're kind of right now talking to think
Yeah.
because we've have like all these different ideas about what it looks like. And if it were easy, people would know what to do by now. So like don't feel like, you navigating it badly. We're all trying to figure it out as we go. How do we have these relationships that work inside and outside the office? I think it's one of those things where do the insights or do some sort of bill it
Myers
as like
training.
Yeah, do it as like bill it as a team bonding experience. Be like, yeah, this is a great team bonding experience. Let's all go
It was
do
amazing.
this. Amazing.
Like I
Well,
wish I
yeah,
could do it with like my family. Although I feel like I already know the answer to that. But like
yeah, I feel like I already know the answer to that too. I think. I don't know actually. No,
my dad would be red, my and probably blue. My mom absolutely like 1,000% yellow. I don't know that I could figure out my brother. It's probably the one. I think my husband would probably be green and red. Green, blue, red. He's got all four. Like I can see all four, but like it would be interesting.
my husband I think is blue, red, yellow, green. I feel are on the same like in the bottom thing.
What I found really interesting about that too, though, was so you go through like the whole big long day of talking about who you are at work, and then you get to the last pages and they show you who you are at home. And at
Yes.
home, so yellow at work, I was like one color above the line, but at home still had a ton of yellow, but my green comes up, which is more like my hippie chick side,
Yeah.
like, which makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
However, I mean, when did we do that? 2019. So I would love to do it again after everyone having been through a global pandemic. And then, like, I would, what, almost half of our office having children in that time.
Oh my God, was I pregnant then? It was
Maybe.
2019. I had to be because
It
I
might
rem
have been like fall of 2019, I feel like is when we
yeah.
did.
So like I was pretty pregnant. I think everybody in the office knew by then.
Yeah. I think it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I don't think we're gonna do it. Not
Um,
now.
what do you think would be like in talking about blurring the line? Like, what would you think would be like like the negative connotation of that?
I think it's making an inappropriate joke and the other person not getting it. Like I have a pretty dark sense of humor and a pretty like irreverent comedic style, and I feel like 99% of the office would not get what I'm saying.
Feel like you do a decent job though of feeling that person out before you throw like your darkest and wittiest stuff out there.
No, that yeah, and that's being a diplomat's kid and like definitely knowing that I can read a room real fast. But I think like being the most unfiltered, like being the most me, I guess not many people in the office see, right? Like you're the only one. Yeah, you're the only one. Yeah, and my other colleague, but he doesn't work in our office, but still. Like you
Yeah.
would be the only one that I would say you get like the most unfiltered like version of me
Yeah.
as opposed to yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
Hmm. And I would probably say the same about you. Um,
Like I would like I don't think before I talk to you, which is
yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, no, I don't
which is
either.
probably not great. But like, like in the sense of like I don't go I go this is
Yeah.
what had happened was
What happened was.
um like they're like we're both bursting in each other's offices and goes, "Hey."
Thank God for those
So,
sliding doors.
thank God for the sliding doors and like some sort of like soundproofing because there's definitely soundproofing. God bless.
Definitely in that like middle booger looking thing.
Yeah, God bless that the old boss that we had that like did the office because
Yeah.
that was something she thought about. She was like, I need soundproofing in these offices.
Smart.
I was
Also,
like,
we're all boisterous, loud people on the phone. So like we would all go crazy if we could hear each other on each other's call.
and also like sometimes I'm like saying shit on some calls and I'm like, I hope nobody heard me.
Oh man. But yeah, I think it's hard to completely separate friendship colleagues now. And if you're someone who can do it, like reach out to us, tell us your secrets because Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to be on all the time anymore. I'm just so
I
tired.
so tired. And like, it's kind of like I don't know why this comment came up, but like it's kind of like Horcruxes, right? Like what
Yeah.
part of you what part of your soul
I'd love to know what part of my soul is sucking me dry today because I am just, y'all, I'm run down. I am struggle bus hardcore today.
you had a tough week though.
It was a
You
long week.
it was yeah, tough week this week.
I had one
Um
18-hour day this week, guys.
and I literally my
18-hour
memes
week. Did I say 18-hour week or 18? I had one
day
18-hour this
you
week. Did I
said
say that?
18 you said it correctly. I have not memes. I have not sent you that many memes this week because I like kept it together. I was like, you know what? And
That's a
there's
lot.
that says a lot. That's how I knew it was hard. And then I went and bothered other people. And then we'll be back to your regular scheduled programming over the weekends. You're like, stop. I have meetings. Stop. Leave me alone.
That's
I'm like,
another that's another interesting part of the blur too, is like I share my social I think this where we work is the first time I ever really started sharing my
yes.
social media accounts with people because it just like didn't feel like a big deal to do that. Like not
But
everybody has it, but some people do. And
but now
you
I feel like
you get a real me on there, that's for damn sure. But I don't think anything I do on social media is very different than what I do in person. So
yeah, but I do like some posts. I do like I have close friends.
oh
Like
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
I'll like utilize that.
for
But
sure.
like I'm pretty irreverent like on social media. Like I don't obviously go beyond like too much. But like there are certain things that I put like close friends. Like there's a slightly politically like not political, but like more of like, hey, just figure out what this is saying to you as opposed to freaking out about said information. And that went to close friends because I was like, I don't particularly because I think I have my boss on there, a couple of people from work that I'm like, I don't particularly want you to see this type of thing. Um, so yeah, I think social media is also like where it starts blurring because somebody can go, "Oh, I saw you did this weekend." You're like, "How?" Like, "Oh crap, I posted it about on social media, right?"
Right, right, right,
So yeah, yeah, I think that adds to the blur. I think a little bit because you I don't think you should constantly be thinking about what you're posting, but that matters. I think people see that and people take that and inform like people don't be out sick or something and post that you're at a concert.
right,
Like think about it.
right,
Think about
right,
it.
right,
Right? Like I don't post that you're out of town and then somebody uses your house for something, right? Like I think there's like I think people have gotten smarter about that, but still I think those are like silly things at the beginning of social media that people didn't like fully comprehend that people at work would be seeing what you're doing.
right,
But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think with the advent of more technology, with like I ironically, I think remote work is gonna put back the line a much clearer because you're not gonna have the whole, water cooler thing where you're gonna just like shoot the shit and like talk about things randomly, right?
yeah,
Um, I think the more remote work we are, the less I think that'll be an issue for some people. It'll be more of an issue for others, but whichever. I think that's one thing. And then two, I think also if you have like more technology, AI, things like that, how are we going to manage what we think of each other professionally, because I think there's also
right,
like some sort of stigma about like using AI for work, and if you're using it, are you doing a good enough job, and then that kind of like feeds into your reputation professionally, and therefore I think personally as well, and how you connect to people.
right,
But I think on the last thing, one of the things that I've always talked about from a professional standpoint is that you do need to connect with people personally regardless, because if you don't, it becomes a lot harder to work with a person professionally. You kind you you make a person human.
Yeah.
And then it allows you to be like, oh, that person just didn't email me by the deadline. I'm not going to go above her boss's boss and like say, hey, I didn't get what I needed. I'm just going to say, hey, did you see did you see that? Can you please send it to me? That's great. Right. So I think the more apt you have a connection to somebody, the better like you work with them professionally. So, that's my distillation in 2 cents on whether you blur the line or not.
No, I think it makes sense. I also think it just makes people you have to converse with, even if it's just once, it just makes it easier, right? Like you're just going to launch into a conversation where you immediately jump into like, let's talk about this professional stuff. It's like, no, then you sound like a robot, right?
Yeah.
Which, speaking of AI, when we're having to battle the AI robots, don't we want to be able to know who's real and who isn't by the ones who can be compassionate? Although, as we've learned, people are falling in love with chatbots. So what do we know?
Oh my God, go back and listen to that episode because it's
That was a good one.
freaking wild. But also, did you see that now Meta's AI bot will talk about sex to a child that's under 14?
Gross.
Yes.
Gross.
Yes. And I'm like, I hope, because I haven't seen a follow-up to that story, and I do hope, because kids, this is the thing, kids are always curious. Life always finds a way, as Jeff Goldblum said. Like you're always curious about stuff. Like my 5-year-old is like, you need an egg and an embryo like an egg and a sperm to make an embryo, right? So I think kids, if we teach kids early on, they won't be looking for this shit elsewhere. But I think, this is a total tangent, but I think, technology needs to be a lot better. But go watch iRobot now so you know what to do when you fight the robots.
Although I can't quite figure out if it's going to be that first or the like the mushroom zombie clickers from The Last of Us,
Yeah.
because our temperatures are dropping. These crazy zombie mushroom fungi are surviving in places and taking places over that they shouldn't be. So, we should do, what we should do? We should do our favorite like tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. So
Ooh, maybe that should be our next episode. Oh, I've got some good ones.
I love conspiracy theories.
I will never
We'll keep them fun. We won't do too much in like today's political environment because that
yeah,
can
we
get
need a
boring.
break from that shit. We need a break
Yeah,
from that shit.
we'll
We'll
keep
go
it
like
light.
pop culture, like movie, and if to prepare for the next episode, you should probably watch our Room 237
Yes,
doc is in, because that one was also very good, very
that's a good
conspiracy
one.
theory. We talk about oh my God, we haven't watched the MH like 137 one, right? What?
Oh, MH370,
MH370.
the flight that wasn't there, whatever it was called. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah.
Although the Netflix documentary was a
There was
little
nothing new.
sloppy. It was
Yeah, there was
sloppy.
nothing new. Nothing new.
It was sloppy.
But yeah, we can do that. But our
Yes.
next, we have a theme for our next doc is in. We're watching a couple things to see which one we want to go with, but it is timely. So we will be doing something about the Vatican and the Pope. There's
Because
two
I think
aspects we're looking at, but either way, it's gonna get real messy. It's gonna
it's
be
going real messy
fun.
because apparently, the Pope investiture or whatever the investiture is happening next week, right?
Yes,
So, or something in the next, couple weeks. So we'll still be on brand to
yeah,
uh to talk about Leo. What is it? Leo the 14th he is? Leo
correct.
the 14th.
All
The
right.
world is the world is a changing, my friends. And so make sure you blur lines often and all the time.
Always make sure you ask for the copyright of the song you're gonna sample for your blurred lines.
Yes. So you don't nice, well done.
Thank you.
Well done on that.
My pop culture reference for the afternoon.
Hey, this is a good one. All righty. Well, thank you all for coming. We would for coming for listening. um, you're here. Thank you for listening. I think it was. We'd love to hear your thoughts because I think this one is more of like a situational thing and how your job is doing, and also there's different types of jobs like blue collar jobs, white collar jobs, and these are all different in how they deal with these kind of dynamics and people dynamics. Um, and we'd love to hear that. And so next episode will be the doc is in TBD, but it will be Popey and
Yes.
Vatican-y. But yeah, Elaine, take us out.
Stay interesting.